I can understand people's, point of view of not getting there, that Jesus was the Son of God, right? There are massive religions like Judaism, for example, that don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God.
Yeah, Muslims.
Muslim don't believe Jesus was the Son of God. Hindu, I mean, don't believe, right? So
Yeah,
there's half the world or more doesn't believe
yeah,
in this, right? And so I can understand that. But when people try to argue that he didn't even exist, you just haven't done your research.
yeah. It's a silly argument.
It's that is just, you have to have no faith to actually believe that he existed.
Yeah.
It's just factually true.
Some archaeological evidence that supports, Jesus, the existence of places mentioned in the gospel. Nazareth, which is where Jesus is from, they have found homes and grave sites in Nazareth that link to, people living there. Peter's home in Capernaum, they found what they believe to be his home because it has inscriptions about him, which is interesting. And then the Pool of Bethesda and the Temple Mount in Israel, those were both thought to be kind of fantastical stories, maybe figments of imagination, but they actually found the Pool of Bethesda in an archaeological find. Interesting side note I threw in here that I thought was kind of fun. You want to talk about, maybe archaeological finds or physical evidence for Jesus or God. There's a mountain in Saudi Arabia called Jabal al-Lawz, which the top of it is all burned. So Exodus 24:17, you may read some scripture in this one if that's cool.
Yeah.
Exodus 24:17 talks about when Moses was on the top of the mountain, talking with God, and the children of Israel were basically looking on from below. And this is what it says, which is interesting. 24:17. And the sight of the glory of the Lord was like devouring fire on top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. So this mountain, which is in Saudi Arabia, in Midian, which is interesting because if you know the history of Moses, when Moses first saw the burning bush, he was tending to the flocks of his father-in-law, Jethro, who was the priest of Midian. And, God basically gave him the assignment to go save the children of Israel from Egypt. And so that's Moses left. But before he leaves, God says to him, when you have delivered the children of Israel from Egypt, come back to the mountain of God. And so that's what Moses did, is he took the children of Israel through the wilderness back to Midian, to the mountain of God. And this Jabal al-Lawz sits right in Midian. And the top of it is all charred. It's like this big mountain where the top of it's all charred. And then you have some unique things around it that help to lend support to this idea that it is the Mount Sinai. So it talks about Moses built an altar for sacrifice. At the base of that mountain, the altar still stands. What it is, it's a big altar that faces towards the mountain that has like walls where they would have kept the animals for sacrifice, and then a place for them to go out and be sacrificed. Then it talks about Moses creating 12 pillars for the tribes of Israel. Those pillars can still be found there. So the remnants of those pillars are all in a big circle there. You can see all 12 of the pillars for the tribes of Israel. And then also there's another story. I can't remember who it is. They come back to the mountain of God. He stays in a cave for 3 days, and that cave is found. And then what's interesting too is a little further down from the mountain, when Moses comes down from the mountain, he finds that the children of Israel have built this altar to the golden calf. And the calf, or the bull, was very holy in Egypt. Okay, it was held in high regard. And so these children of Israel had gone back to this Egyptian, whatever you want to call it, ritual or habit of worshiping this golden calf. And so Moses comes down and he's angry about it. And 3,000 of the dissenters are basically killed for, wanting to fight back against Moses and still worship this golden calf. But what you find is this massive altar at the bottom of the mountain, not too far away, with inscriptions of the bull from the Egyptian inscriptions, the same ones that are in the Egyptian temples in Egypt. You find on this altar in the middle of Saudi Arabia in Midian, alluding to the golden calf. And then what you find just down from there is a graveyard of the 3,000 people that were killed. And so it's pretty incredible, to see all of that put together in context. It's like, sure, top of a mountain black, maybe not, God was standing on the top of the mountain, but altar for sacrificing animals, 12 pillars in a circle, golden calf altar, graves of the 3,000 that were killed. It's like, wow. But then what's interesting is you find that as you're traveling through the wilderness to Mount Sinai, you find all these Hebrew inscriptions. So you'll find like inscriptions of the Hebrew alphabet. Like, why would you find Hebrews in Midian? You wouldn't, right? That's Muslim country. There was one guy who was taking that trip and was taking pictures of everything. And there was one stone that had a bunch of inscriptions of Hebrew letters, and then a menorah, which that's, super Jewish, right? Super Hebrew. Later on, the menorah was chiseled away on that same stone, because if you think Saudi Arabia is Muslim, they have no desire to promote Christianity. These sites, that mountain and the site of the altar for the calves, are all fenced off in Saudi Arabia. So, it's tough to get access to them. There was a biblical scholar who went there a while back, the first one to kind of discover these. And he was actually put in prison for like 80 days. Him and his sons were held, I think, for 74 days in Saudi Arabia. So it's like, they don't play around, So it's like, there's no tourism. You can't go check it out. But there is some small documentaries that have been done by people who've traveled over there. Pretty awesome, very cool.
Now, how does that pertain to the argument for Jesus Christ?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is Moses, when he is on the top of the mountain, he asks God who God is. Who should I go back and tell the children of Israel that you are? And God says what to him? I am that I am. Well, in the New Testament, Jesus says, I am the I am. So we'll get into that. And what would that mean in context for the Israelite Jews? I mean, that's like saying something. They saw Moses convening with God, and their high priest went up halfway up the mountain and feasted with God. They sat with Moses and feasted with God. And then Moses goes to the top and sees God face to face and receives the tablets and comes back and tells them the name of God. And it's like, for Jesus to then come down and be like, that's my name. It's like, okay.
Like, what's up?
There's some absolute, Jesus knew what he was saying when he said that.
Yeah.
So, that's where I think the tie-in is very strong there, is that some of the language that Jesus uses where people maybe claim, oh, Jesus never said directly, I am God, which we can talk a little bit about. But, that to them was as good as saying that.